Thank you very much for your talk, Renad. I now have 3 questions for you to answer about that talk. Why do the militias in Iraq want to become state actors?
I think in Iraq, what you've seen are several armed groups across the spectrum driving to become state actors for several reasons, but I think there are 2 main reasons. One, being a state actor brings that organization quite a bit of legitimacy. Iraqis across the country recognize the importance of the state and legitimacy derived to the state. When we poll and survey around the country, most Iraqis say that they want the state and the state armed forces to be there. So there's an element of kind of like popularity but legitimacy that comes with being a state actor rather than armed actor. And 2, of course, Iraq is very wealthy. And having oil as the income means a very centralizing type of resource. So having a state, sort of being part of the state, having a foot in the state, allows these actors to become incredibly wealthy and take part in the kind of elite pact and the power sharing that you've seen in Iraq since 2003.
Thank you. And what are the key conditions that have made certain hybrid actors successful and persistent?
I think the success of certain hybrid armed actors is their existence as hybrid or as parastatal organizations. They're not just militias or warlords or insurgents. They're not none of that. What they are a parastatal organization that has a political wing, that has an economic wing, that has a social wing, that has a ideological wing, and they're able to play all of these different fields off of each other to sustain themselves. And they're able to use different types of powers at different times to sustain themselves. So not only are they armed actors that could use coercion, they're also ideological at times. They can use ideology, and they can also use political economy, and they can make incredible wealth through that. And not just, as we say, through checkpoints and borders, and not through the informal economy, but also from becoming a state actor and finding some of the coffers of the state. So it's really the drive to be the state actor that allows them to be successful. And the key to this is, of course, the kind of weakness of the unitary state in Iraq.
Thank you. And finally, how have the recent protests in Iraq impacted the state and non-state actors?
Well, the protests in Iraq that began in October 2019 and persist until today are fundamentally calling for a revolution. So we've seen protests in the past. We've seen protests in 2009, 11, 15, 16. Those were very much protests that were from a different generation, let's say, and also quite elite, top-down heavy. You actually had some of the state and non-state actors leading those protests. These protests are different. These protests now are youth-led, they're radical, they reject all leaders, whether they're non-state or state actors, and they're calling for something quite different. They're not satisfied with promises of change, promises of reform, and so they're quite willing to just sit in the streets for months and months on end, calling for an end to that post-2003 system.
Thank you, and thank you for a fantastic talk and some very insightful answers.